Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Guitar School podcast. We've got a great lesson lined up today. We're going to talk about bending, drop D tuning, and we've got some more tales from the road. Stick around, it's a good one. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Guitar School podcast. So we're on episode 3 now, George, so we're rattling through them now, so thanks for sticking with us so far. So what's on the set list today, George?
So on our set list today, we are going to talk about our week in music as musicians and tutors. We're then looking at our technical focus, which this week are string bendings. Is string bending? Are string bendings? We'll get into it.
The first one, I think.
The first one, yeah. String bending. We're then going neck deep, and we are looking at different guitar tunings. This week we're going to be focusing on drop D, which we're going to look at how we can do it, when we can do it, and why should we do it. From there, we've got our gig stories, our little confessional. We've had various stories past couple of weeks, but we're going to have some more this week. We then got our audience questions from our private Facebook group, which is an asset to this podcast because it allows us to delve into things that perhaps we didn't know that we can get into.
Absolutely, and if you've got a question that you think would be that you'd like us to answer, please do sort of either throw it in the Facebook group or throw it in the YouTube comments or whatever. I think we're making this show for you, and if you've got a question, we'll answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from there, we've got our riff of the week. We'll recap last week's riff, and then we'll give you a new one for next week.
What is this week's riff, George?
This week's riff is Carry On Wayward, Son. Now, you suggested that this came from our Facebook group
as
a request.
I apologise in advance. Somebody requested it. I think they might have actually emailed me rather than put it in the Facebook group. So, whoever you are, there you go. That one's for you.
Yeah, a bit of Kansas to finish us off.
Absolutely.
And then we will, of course, conclude with our jam at the end.
Good stuff. Brilliant. Right then. So, was this week a rock or a roll, George?
This week, I'm going to say rock.
Okay.
Again, yeah, keeping it positive. So what happened this week? Well, it's just been the half-term school holiday over here in the UK in our little area. It's been our half-term. And here at the school, we run rock camp sessions, which the way I describe it to people, for me at least, it's 6 hours with 6 under-12s. In this case, in this week, it's been 7 under-12s.
Poor you.
Yeah. But actually, saying that, they're all veterans to the camp, and we've had a few new starters. And essentially, we have a couple of guitarists, 3 drummers in one instance, bassist, and we all sit down and we put songs together. And to say they're all under 12, they are rivaling bands out there playing pubs tonight. They do a good job.
And I think as well, it's worth mentioning that sort of us as tutors, we've got this responsibility of this is how we sort of feed them good music. So what songs have you been working on?
We've done Rockin' All Over the World, Status Quo, which is a
classic
British staple. Yep. What else have we done? Yesterday we did You Give Love a Bad Name, Bon Jovi, which was hard. I must admit, that's got some hard bits in it. And it's difficult when you've got mixed ability students, which is fantastic because you can get different people on different parts. When you've got some players playing pinch harmonics and some just doing the open chords, it creates such a big open sound. Yeah. And we also jammed yesterday on Park Life by Blur.
I heard that, and I thought it was Gene Genie for a second.
It's similar,
but it's not. It's yeah. The so. And then
of course, Blur play. And of course, everyone shouts Park Life.
Yeah, okay.
And then from there, the only other thing that would have made my week a roll rather than a rock, I found a extraordinarily cheap guitar on Facebook Marketplace. It was a £65 2022 Squire Bullet Telly. And they retail about 170 quid.
Right, okay.
New. It was a sunburst. It had a string-through body. It had a maple neck. Really, actually quite a nice piece. It was in Burnley. It's about an hour.
Yeah, okay.
Sent the bloke a message saying, hi, I've got cash waiting. Will you be around this afternoon? I'm in Huddersfield. Can you let me know how long it'll take? And his response was, you're too far for that, mate. And then he blocked me. I had cash in my hand, ready to make the hour trip, and he didn't want it.
And for those of you at the back, George loves a good road trip.
Yeah, I don't mind driving for an hour. Yeah,
just for a little bit.
Just an hour, but you know, if you've ever dealt with Marketplace, you'll know there's some interesting individuals. And I thought I'd be I was being really kind. Like I live here, you live there. Here's the money, deal. Didn't even gave him full asking price. He said, "No, you're too far for that," and then blocked me straight away. So hence why I'm using my 2006 telly instead of that Sunburst.
And I feel like just before we go on to my rock or roll this week, a public service announcement. Please be very, very careful while you're buying those things online. I went through a little spat. I'm a bit of a Del boy with guitars. I like to buy and sell guitars occasionally, and that's one way that I keep the stable kind of churning is I'll buy something, play it for a couple of months, and then move it on. Most of them, it's like puppies. Most of them end up staying, but the theory is that I move them on eventually. And I did a deal with somebody while over sort of COVID times, while that was happening. Obviously all remote, and I bought 2 Fender guitars from this gentleman and never received them, and I lost the money as well. Yeah, so be very, very, very careful what you're doing with that stuff, folks. You've always go and see it if you can. Definitely. And I learned that lesson the hard way. So.
Well, the final bit of roll from this week. Last week I mentioned that the tuners on this very guitar exploded. Essentially, they stopped working, and now I have I would say shiny, but they are satin black. I have a new set of black machine heads, and I've kept the chrome rings around the top, so a bit of a contrast. Cool. And so far, so good. And I've got my guitar back. You don't realise you lose it when you don't have it for a week or so. Yeah. It's nice to have it back.
And what is that for those of us that aren't in Technicolor today? What are you playing today?
So this is a 2006, just a standard Squier Telly. Nothing special, but I like to think this is from when they made decent ones. Nowadays, a lot of students buy a brand new Squier, and it's okay, but it's not that bad. Now, this one, if you're not watching, is battered and bruised. Now, the body, I relic this myself. I Googled relic Telecaster, got a hairdryer and a blade, and I took away bits of body because it did have a few chips on it, and that annoyed me more than having... Now, the scratch plate, I set it on fire when I was 16, deliberately, to age it, and I've left it in a windowsill for the past year. So now it's got this aged look, because the fretboard is naturally aged, if you can see. If you can't, imagine Keith Richards' poor old triggers.
It's like an old telly. It's like an old 50s telly where the maple board starts to go a little bit.
But otherwise, this is I've only gigged this guitar once, surprisingly. But otherwise, it's my go-to teaching, go-to band practice guitar. It's just it's like an old pair of boots.
Yeah, okay. Somebody had commented on the Facebook that I've been giving my SG a lot of hammer this week, which I have. You know, guitars come out of the case occasionally, and then will stay out for a while. And then, the SG, up until this week, was in its case from Riffmas. I've not taken it out since Riffmas.
That's the problem with having so many.
Yeah, but don't tell anybody. Let's just keep that quiet. That's fine. I need it. I definitely need it.
But what about your week? Has it been a rock or a roll for you, James?
It's been a rock. Again, half term, not really been... I've been doing more behind the scenes stuff this week, prepping for the podcast, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we're currently 3 weeks behind with the podcast. So we're always I know, but I know it's all an illusion. But so we're actually prepping the podcast. Today's Thursday, and the podcast is going out the first episode 1's coming out on Sunday. So we've got a lot of behind the scenes kind of stuff to do, uploading and getting ready for all that. And also, I'm prepping for a lesson where you'll see the lesson before you see the podcast, but we're on the agenda today. I'm going to film a lesson for Another Brick in the Wall.
Bit of Floyd again, yeah?
Now, I've been working on the... Sorry if I've just deafened y'all. So I've been working on that solo this week, and it's got some horrendous bends in it.
Holster and more. No.
And so I've been practicing that like a crazy person because I should be able to play it if I'm showing you guys how to do it. And my bend, we're going to talk about bends in a bit, which is going to tie into today's class. My ring finger is so sore from doing all those bends, and I've been through a couple. I blame the guitar, not the guitar. So I've gone from my Strat, I've gone to played the SG for a bit. I've got this lovely Les Paul Standard in Bob and Burst today that I'm playing. And you actually told me, which I didn't know, that that was done on a Les Paul with P90s. Is that
correct? It still might be a myth, but David Gilmour played many guitars. He's mainly associated to playing that black Strat with a black scratch plate, which he sold for £7 million. Couple of years ago, sold all his guitars.
Just a little bit more than he paid for it then.
Yeah, right. He's always seen playing a Strat, and it sounds like a Strat. You can hear that single. It's not a heavy. That if you listen to the sound, it sounds quite thin and quite warm. But he actually played, as you said, a Les Paul. I think it was a gold top actually with P90 pickups. So again, a 1950s guitar.
Yeah.
And he also owns one of the first ever Strats.
I think it's serial number 4.
Yeah, number 2 or number 4, but it was white with a gold scratch plate.
Oh, it might be another one then.
Oh, blimey. Right,
BBC did a documentary a while ago, and he had serial number 4, I think it was, and it was a seafoam green stripe with a maple neck. It was a custom colour one. I'm such a nerd.
It's now 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, shall we get on then? So very much a rock. Lots of guitar playing. Lots of stuff that makes me happy this week. So thank you for asking. So what's the technical focus?
Well, as you said, James, our technical focus are bends. We're looking at bends this week. Now, we always talk about the toolkit, the guitarist toolkit. We've done hammer-ons, and this week we're looking at bends. So bends are something else that we can add into our list. And I think what we should talk about first is what happens behind the scenes. What actually happens when you do a bend. Like when you change gear in your car, you're not just moving a gear stick. Lots of other gubbins are happening. So do you want to talk about what moves, what happens in
So the whole point of bending a string is you want to take one note, and by bending the string, you're essentially tightening the string, which makes the pitch go up. And that's what happens. Now, that's kind of like level 1. Level 2 is realising where you need to be conscious of where you're bending to. If every note I played and I just randomly bent it,
lovely bit of jazz there.
That's just a little bit. Now, a lot of guitarists get by just bending till it sounds good, which is a good kind of like baseline level to do it, but the next level of that is making sure that you can... Where are you going
It's
to?
predictable. Has to be predictable.
So A minor pentatonic. We love a bit of A minor pentatonic. I like that first shape because the 7th fret of the G, the 8th fret of the B, and the 8th fret of the high E, all those notes can be bent either what we call a tone or a full step. So what that means is you can bend that the equivalent of 2 frets. So when I bend this 7th fret of the G... Yeah, George. For those of us not in technical, George has just played the 9th fret on the same string. If you play that note again for me, George, and I'm gonna bend the string really slowly, and I want you to listen for when I hit
It'll all match up. Won't
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like when you're tuning. When you're tuning a guitar. Now, if we do that again, George, but I'm going to overcook it.
Yeah. So this is reference point.
Lovely. If I undercook it.
Yeah. Lovely bit of dissonance. Now, that's not the end of the world because we have different sorts of bends. We have what we call, let's start at the bottom, you've got a quarter, a half, and a whole. Now, that refers to how far we're moving.
Correct.
Yeah, so you've got tones and semitones in music. Think of a piano or even your fretboard. You've got a semitone, which is the distance from one fret, say fret 7 to fret 8, or a whole tone, which is from fret 7 to fret 9, like we're just talking about.
So what about a quarter then? What does that mean?
Now, we looked at this last week a little bit, and we're sort of reserving ourselves for this week. A quarter, I call it a tweak to my students. Now, full step bend, a half, a quarter, it's just a little bit. Now, you think of some lead lines. That there that you just heard, I'd call that a quarter, that tweak. It's almost like, what's that Led Zeppelin song?
But if you...
Yeah,
okay. Heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker,
yeah.
That's one.
Now, bend a little bit further on that and listen to how it sounds, everybody.
So the nice clean-cut version, that quarter, that tweak. Whereas if I went a bit far, put a bit too... Because when you're learning, when you're a beginner, you're not sure how far to push it. So that's what we're trying to answer today. If I put it a bit too far... Now that actually sounded quite nice by coincidence, but it's not. It's almost footloose, but that's a half step bend.
Yeah. Okay.
If you go for a full, it's not that.
It's too much, yeah. And I say this all the time in my here on YouTube and in my one-to-one lessons. You got to think about guitar techniques like seasonings. If you use too much seasonings in your food, it makes it gross. So it's that sort of adult approach to it. Kids that'll learn that'll just bend it till they can't bend the string anymore. Yeah. And in their sort of naive look of the world, because they've no life experience, it sounds great. Whereas as adults come into the guitar, it's like, oh, well, actually, I think I could do that a little bit better.
Yeah. So we keep talking about the challenge, the blues improvisation challenge on the Facebook group. So you want to memorize the best way to get the benefits of bending, unless you're learning specific songs, like Brick in the Wall say, there are set bends that you have to do. Whereas in improv, you can make it up, hence improv. But again, you want to memorise what works.
So what would be a good note in shape 1 A minor pentatonic for a quarter bend?
A quarter bend. I would say the 5th fret on the G string.
Yes.
It's that tweak.
Yeah, and you'll see me do that quite a lot in the clips that I put on the Facebook group. You know, if you bend it too far, I mean, it kind of does that major third thing if you want it to, but we're not looking for that. Think Eric Clapton and the Blues Breakers kind of vibe that we're going for. It's that sort of. I think if you do the. Could you just give me a shuffle in air, please, George?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
There's loads of that in
Albert
like Hideaway
King
and stuff like that. Yeah, Freddie King, yeah, as well.
It's that sort of. We'll come back to. It's that tweak idea at the bottom.
Yeah, the solo for Sunshine of Your Love.
Oh, yeah. So I love it when it goes into the into the major. Yeah. But back to our bends.
School of Clapton, the Eric Clapton podcast.
Yeah, what you want to think about is now we all know. Well, we like to think we know anyway. The shape 1, the blues scale or the main minor scale. If you go to that G string on the 7th fret, so G string 7th fret, if you then just play that 9 on the G, think, well, that sounds good, that works. So we know, tick, we can bend a whole step. If you think, can I bend half from there? Well, that's a blue note. It doesn't really work, but you can get away with it. Mm-hmm. So in terms of your bending, what I say to my students is, check if it works. If you think I'm going to bend a whole step, bend 2 frets. That'll work because I can hear that 2 frets ahead works ahead of me. There's no hole in the fretboard that you're going to fall down. That's what I recommend anyway.
Yeah, and also that's a really good way for thinking about what notes you can bend. Literally look at the next position in the scale and see how many frets away it is. Yeah. You know, and I'd stick to the G, the B, and the high E strings for this. Definitely. I'm not saying you can't bend the other strings, but you'll get the quickest results with 100%. Those, and that's the best place to start. Any teacher worth the salt will get you to do it there first rather than on the lower strings. Now, I've got a little exercise for us to try for bending notes in tune. So we're going to come out of A minor pentatonic and we're going to go to E minor pentatonic, which it's the same shape, but instead of starting on fret 5, we're going to start on fret 12.
Cool.
So we're up
in
here.
The octave position, yeah.
Now, what we're going to do, we're going to bend the 15th fret of the B string. Yeah? Now, earlier, me and George was hitting a reference note for me, and I was trying to bend my string up to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way that you can practice that yourself. Now, that note on the 15th fret, before you bend it, is a D note. If you were to bend that note, you want to bend it a whole tone, a full step, 2 frets, a tone. Yeah. There's and you've got to be really careful of the terminology in this, and maybe that's worth a video in itself discussing the American bastardization of music theory. Yeah. But what I'd do is bend that note, but then play your low E string and let it drone over the top of it. So if I play my low E string and then I'm going to pick that note,
you're bringing it up to a level.
You're practicing bending it in tune. So that's how I'd practice that this week.
Yeah, that's a great one. And another thing I'd just like to touch on before we move on, before we go neck deep, is your finger position for bends. I always say it's heavy lifting. It's just a string, but actually, once you get started, it feels quite heavy. So what I recommend, say we're bending that 7th fret on the G again. Your main finger is your ring finger in that. That's the one that's carrying that note. But then I've got my middle finger and my first finger for support.
So you use 3 fingers?
Well, it depends. If I'm doing Johnny Be Good, say, if you can see my fingers here, I need that first finger on the B string.
Yeah, for that extra note, which is, for those of us not in technical, that's
5th fret on the
it's
B.
on another string, that's right.
So that's why I need that finger. But otherwise, you're bricking the wall. if I can, I use 3. Now that might just be me, but I find it helps a lot of students that I pass that knowledge on to. Okay. Because if you try and do it with one finger, I've been bending for years, and it's quite. You've really got it, and it just brings less tension.
It's a bit of a balance trying to keep hold of it. You don't want you don't want that to happen. But it's also, I think it's worth mentioning. You know, a lot of people are watching the stuff that we're putting out and go, and my bends don't sound like yours. And it's like, yeah, because you've not played for 20 years. Yeah, that's why your bends don't sound like that. And when I played for a year, 18 months, my bends sounded like that too. You just keep doing it, keep showing up. We're not special. We are a bit special, but not in that way.
Not in that way. Yeah.
That sort of. Just keep doing it, and it will come. So absolutely. I think it might be time to go neck deep, George.
Absolutely. So this week we are talking about drop D. Now you've probably heard that branded around musicians in gigs and stuff, and essentially it's an alternate guitar tuning. We are in E standard. That is your general sort of.
So that's tuning. The very first. That's kind of how you'll begin as a beginner guitar player. You'll learn Eddie 8 Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie as the strings. We call that standard tuning or tune to standard. Some people call it
440 hertz.
A440, correct. Yeah. Now, this is a modification to that some rock guitar players do to get a bit of a sort of deeper and thicker sound. So what does it mean, George? What does drop D mean?
Drop D means we're taking the low E string of our guitar, which is E. It's a low E because we have 2 E strings. And we are changing this E note to a D. Now, in musical theory land, D is lower than E in pitch, in this scenario anyway. So we want to drop it. Now that means tuning. Now a lot of players, when they go to drop D, they plug their tuner in quite rightly, and lower it until their tuner says, "Yeah, you're in D." What I like to do, and a lot of players do, and you can hear this at the start of a lot of songs. It's at the start of "Psycho" by Muse. Actually, this. What we want to do, well, we have a D string, so we pick that D string, and then I'm going to pick the E. See, they're different, but if I pick that again and begin to wind down, can you hear that they're not the same?
I can, and just for those of you at the back of the room that need to see that again, it's really important that both strings are droning to make this happen. You can't just play one then the other and then just drop it and it magically happens.
You need a reference.
You need a reference point. So the open D string is our reference point. And I'm going to keep lowering the low E string and take it really slowly. You'll know when you've hit it.
Because it's easy to miss it. I'd say it's there. Yeah?
And I don't know what you call it, but you can almost hear like a bit of a warble when it's in tune.
If you bang a tuning fork or a metal spoon or a screwdriver, you can hear it. It's that frequency. I can't really explain it. We maybe need to get an audio file on the podcast. Yeah, and that's really good ear training. If you're new to playing music, you might not know what to listen out for, and ear training is so useful.
Yeah, and just be careful. You can overcook it.
It's very low and swampy. Yeah. That's it.
Now that's a familiar sound, isn't it?
Oh. Now
so what's happening there with the open strings, George?
Well, we've got a D ringing out. We've also got an A, and we've got another D, and they're just being themselves now. And it's a different sound compared to what we had before.
So it's actually what we call a power chord. It's a fifth chord.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So if you stack a D, an A, and then another D underneath it, which serves as the octave, you get what's called a fifth chord. Now, the reason guitar players like this is all of a sudden I can use little mini bar chords to play power chords, and it sounds mega.
It's just mean instantly, isn't it?
Now, it doesn't have to be. I think everybody thinks a drop D and thinks straight away. And that's not what I use it for. No.
It's there's one, so you can have stuff like that.
Rage Against the Machine,
Motley Crue, Girls, but you can have country, a lot of country and Nashville stuff.
Right, okay.
Now that is a million miles away from. So different.
A good example I like to use is Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Yeah, the CCR version.
Yeah, yeah. So Am I right in thinking CCR did it originally?
Yes, they did, and then
They wrote so many songs, didn't they?
they definitely did Proud Mary first.
I've done. I did Fortunate Son a couple of weeks ago, and I love the way John Fogerty plays and the whole sort of. It's that sort of. What's the first song on the self-titled record called? Green River.
Oh, right, that one.
It just sounds like. Oh, it's great.
That Vietnam War era of songs is so swampy.
Yeah, and it's not. It sounds like a derogatory term, but it's not. It just sounds mega. But anyway, coming back onto something like Heard It Through the Grapevine, it's in D minor.
So you can add that.
So you can have that D there, but also I can strum that chord. Now, if I played that the octave above, it doesn't have that.
No, that aggression, that lower pitch, yeah.
It's dark, isn't it? So, yeah, drop D, you'd probably come across it when you find a song that you want to learn that's got it in. Now, how do we get out of drop D?
Yeah, so I'd do it the opposite. So before, we had an open D string to find that D. Well, now we have an open E string because we know we need E. So I like to use the high E because it's such an explicit sound.
Yeah.
You could also use the 7th fret on the A string. But I'm going to use the high E because I only have 2 hands. I need 1 hand on my tuners, which is the other end of the guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that high E and do it the other way. So just slowly. And I'm there.
And again, till they sound the same.
Till they sound the same.
So I'm going to pick the high E string. I'm going to make sure that that's ringing out. And then I'm going to slowly bring the low E string. Now, I think it's a really good sort of as a public service announcement. Don't be too rough with your tuners. No. Slow and steady, and always try and sort of tune up to a note. So I'm going to pick that note. So I pick one. You want to pick the high E string first, so you get your reference point. If you pick them together, it's just going to sound like mush. So pick the high E, pick the B, pick the low E closely D, after, /D. Bring it up.
Steady.
Right, I overcooked it a little bit then, so I had to bring it back down. But as your ear develops, you'll start to hear this stuff a lot more naturally. We're doing it in under 3 seconds. Yeah. It might take you a little bit longer, but that's okay. You know, slow and steady wins the race. Don't care how quick you do it, as long as you're doing it properly.
But we've looked at that because you may come across a song on your site, on YouTube, on Facebook, or wherever, and it says at the top, drop D. Mm-hmm. No need to panic. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we should have some gig stories again.
Okay.
Do you want to take us away with that?
Okay, so I've dubbed this one Sleeping Beauty's Transit Van.
I can't wait to hear this because
So this is a very sort of PG-13 version of it. I've got to be careful how much I say of this because there's other people involved. I was on tour in Ireland.
Right.
There's a band that I played with that I did 2 tours in Ireland in sort of 2 concurrent autumns, and it was such a good time. This is before Kirklees Guitar School was as big as it is now, and pre sort of family and all that kind of stuff. And we essentially spent between 7 and 10 days on both tours in Ireland, playing loads of little theatres with like this 60s group that I used to play with, and getting very, very drunk.
Right, life of a musician.
Yeah, which it was relatively short-lived for me, but I enjoyed it while it was all happening. So we were on tour in Ireland, and I want to preface this with saying that although we were out and we were having a good time, the driver of the vehicle was not intoxicated, because I don't want anybody to take assumptions of this. Neither were we. We were actually coming back from a gig. It was one of the ones further away. I can't remember which. It might have been Cork we were coming back from. Okay. So how those tours kind of happened is we'd get a house, almost like a holiday home, stay in the house, and that would be base for the week.
Be cheaper than a hotel, I imagine.
Correct. And also just a lot nicer to live out of one place. So we'd get a house and we'd live there for the week, 10 days, and we'd go and do the gigs out in the van and come back. And we came over on the ferry with the van and all this gear. So we're coming back from Cork, and I'm terrible. If I'm not driving, I go to sleep very, very, very easily, very quickly in the back of the van. So we had a transit minibus that had been converted into a band van, and we all had our own little spots. Mine was the back corner. And anyway, so we've got a couple of, maybe about an hour and a half drive ahead of us. Pretty tired, so I got my head down.
Yeah.
Didn't think anything of it. I then go out. I was a smoker at the time, so I'm not anymore, but I went out for a cigarette the following morning, and I look at the front of the van, and it's all caved in.
Oh.
I got out of this van like 8 hours ago and just sort of got out of the van.
In the dark?
I went to bed. In the dark,
Right.
I went to bed. So anyway, band leader gets up an hour later and I say, what's happened to the van? I think something's happened to the van while we've been, while we've been...
Someone might try to take your gear off.
Yeah, it didn't look like it'd been vandalised. It looked like we'd had an accident.
Right.
We had an accident.
Okay.
And I stayed asleep throughout the entirety of it.
Just in the back.
In the back, just
Right,
with my head
okay.
down. And apparently it was a really big ordeal. It took hours to get home, one thing or another, and I was just in the back of the van, asleep under my coat.
Nice.
So yeah, Sleeping Beauty's Transit
Sleeping
van.
Beauty. There you are. Wow. I suppose when there's that feeling when you finish a gig, you're on such a high. You're packing your stuff down, going, yeah, that was great. And then you get in the car and you go, no, finished. I've logged off. I'm out.
What's
Feels like
ironic
the
is
gym.
that I can sleep in a moving vehicle on any time. Ask me to sleep like a normal person and I can't.
Yeah, in bed, in the warm. Yeah.
So what about you? What's your gig story?
This week, it's not as, glamorous as that. It's not as eventful as that. This was actually last summer, and me and my duo partner, we play a lot of open gigs, outdoor, accompanying classic car shows. So imagine big field, little tent in the middle, and we play music with a PA. It's quite a nice thing. Wallpaper, musical wallpaper. And it was August bank holiday, actually. So, of course, it was raining. And we thought, right, it's okay. We've got a little marquee over us. We're getting there. But it wasn't really stopping it. And I was mortified that the fretboard on my Fender Malibu acoustic was getting wet. Like the strings were getting quite wet. But whatever, it was a bit funny because you're like, it's raining, we're playing. And then it really started to rain. We thought, right, well, let's get everything off because we could hear that the sound was being interfered by the rain. And as I went to turn round to turn the PA system off or unplug my guitar, I touched it and I thought, oh, that's sharp. Ow. No, it wasn't sharp. Because it got so wet, the whole PA, the whole mixer was basically glowing. It was live. Because the extension lead had got wet.
Wow.
And everything had got wet and all the channels had got moisture in. Every time I went to touch this box, it was zapping me.
So how did you turn it off?
I had to put one foot on the extension lead, so on the sort of round, you can imagine a circular extension power bank. Put one foot on that, and then the other foot I used to try and kick the plug off, and then that was how we got the power off. But we couldn't unplug anything because
That's a really quick way of welding yourself to the floor if you're not careful.
Yeah, on wet grass. Yeah. I think it was just the rubber soles of my boots that were on my wellies actually, because it was in a field. I was wearing wellies because it was raining. But yeah, it was every touch of the PA we were being zapped, and every time I did it, there was a nice little zip through the speakers.
And did you have an appropriate risk assessment to go with that, George?
Yeah, we went home and got paid.
Now, I think it's worth mentioning that when you are out, it sounds great that we go out playing for a living, but occasionally the elements, things beyond us control, sort of happen. And we've got to still do it, otherwise we don't get paid.
Yeah, well, luckily we said to the
Are we
organiser...
down in like Malvern or something like that?
I think it was actually Sheffield. It wasn't too far away.
Right, okay.
But no, it wasn't. It was a place called Capeston Hall, which is just outside Manchester Airport.
Right, so not a million miles away, but it's too far to go and not get paid.
Yeah, so we said, look, Matthew, it's raining a lot. No one's listening to us, and we're not playing. And he just handed us our envelope, and off we went.
That was a dream. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, because I've had it before where they've made us play to nobody.
Yeah, I've had that
to earn us money, but yeah, hey ho.
Yeah.
Right then, so
questions.
I think we should move on to audience questions. So I'll bowl this one to
Please,
you
yeah.
if
I'll have a listen, see what I can do.
you want. So question 1: how should I go about constructing a basic song? This is by Ryan Peter. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, Ryan. So basic song. It can seem very glamorous and rock and roll thinking about writing a song. James and I have never really delved, well, I haven't anyway, into song making. But sometimes you can just be playing and you'll come up with your go, oh, I like that. Let's make a song. What do you do from there? Now, whether you start with a riff or you just start with some chords, it comes back to being really glamorous. You see it in the films. They sit and they go, "Whoa, play that again." Oh, that's going to be our new record. It doesn't work like that in the real world sometimes.
Yeah, and my experience with songwriting, I don't do a lot of writing, and I never have. I've always been more interested in playing the songs rather than... I always wanted to be the guy stood behind the pop star rather than being the pop star, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to play to the big audiences, but I still wanted to be able to go to Morrison's.
Yeah.
It's that kind of... That was what I wanted to be as a kid. Says a lot, really, doesn't it? But I wrote an EP years ago, like solo guitar stuff, and I've done bits for people, but it always kind of starts with an idea. So we were talking about Drop D. So I had a tune called River a while ago, which had like a drone note.
Okay.
And it just started as messing about.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I'm just messing about one day, and I'm like, that's really nice. So then you start to scratch that itch. So in that case, I used a tiny bit of music theory. I was like, right, well, we're obviously in D, so, and I'm going between an E and an F sharp, and I can carry on with this pattern all on one string using the D major scale.
Across one string there, yeah.
Yeah, it's all on, and I'm like, right, okay. Right, we'll go back up to the room. And then that idea sort of sometimes some of the best songs claim to have been written in minutes at no time at all, and it really comes naturally to you. And I don't think it has to be all that complicated. We've got a lesson coming out soon on Dreams by Fleetwood Mac.
2 chords.
Almost. It's got an A minor in it, a cheeky A minor in it, but that is literally F, G. That's it, you got it.
Yeah.
Does that song need any more? No. So yeah, the only bit of advice I can give you around that is try not to get too wrapped up in too much theory, because what I tended to do was I'd sort of try and turn it into an intellectual exercise on the side of A4, and then it just it didn't sound good. It just sounded like an exercise,
like it was made in a lab.
Yeah. What about
so
you?
Ryan, what I would say is start with some chords. Now you can, as James said, turn it into a big laboratory kind of thing and write all your chords down, see what works. Find some chords that you like and see if they sound good together. Now you can do some Googling or from your own music theory knowledge. We know we've got 8 chords to play with in a key. Some of them are going to be major, minor, a 7th, whatnot. And then chuck a few together. Just roll the dice and see what comes together. At college, I had to come up with something, and I did it that way. I wrote it down, and as you say, it doesn't sound right. Just put 2 chords together, and you can always change them, and just see what sounds nice, and then look for a melody. Now you can use your scale for that. Now, earlier last year, a song called Die With A Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars came out. Now that song had D major 7 and A major 7, and it was in 3/4. Now, little old me, back in COVID, put those exact 2 chords to that exact same strumming pattern together, and there they are, number 1. Now I was in 4/4, but my point here is I had those 2 chords. What was my melody? That was my melody. Oh, try it again. That was it. Just went round over the. Imagine I had a looper pedal. Can you just loop me? Actually, those.
So sorry, what is
D
it?
major 7 and A major 7. So Ryan, what I did, I had these chords. I just recorded it on my phone, audio record, and I just had an experiment. Now, I'm not a singer, but I just put those notes together. And then I think I put a harmony on.
Okay.
You can sort of build it up from there.
Okay.
So that's what I'd do, Ryan. I'd come up with a few chords that you like the sound of. You may already have a few in your back pocket. Record it on your phone for 5 minutes. Give yourself some leeway. Or use a loop pedal if you've got one. And then just have an experiment with what works. And just sort of build it from there. It doesn't have to be as glamorous as the films make out.
I'm sorry if that answer comes across as intentionally vague, but it's like trying to teach improvisation. It's such a loaded.
Comes from the heart, really.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I can't teach you how to write a song because I'm not you. You know, I hope you've got what you need out of that, Ryan. So what's his next question?
Question for you, James. If I look at our quick list, Rhythm playing is one thing I need to work on. Any tips? And that's from Brian W. Marto from our Facebook group.
How do you become a better rhythm guitar player? You play lots of guitar, Brian, either with other people, with records, or with a metronome. Mm-hmm. You spend lots of time playing with something else that's in charge of the how fast you're going. Somebody else is in charge of the timing, and you have to fit what you're doing with that. Now, you don't have to learn 1,000 songs to make that happen, but you have to spend a lot of time playing against something that's keeping you in time and knowing that you are A, in time, B, you're changing in the right place. Mm-hmm. And it can be something as basic. It's a continual thing in my one-to-one lessons. There'll be people watching that I teach one-to-one that'll be nodding their head right now. We go back to basics. If timing's an issue, we go back to basics again and again and again. With if I put a metronome on, mm-hmm. and you can't find where beat 1 is and strum a chord on beat 1, you've no business trying to learn how to play Nile Rodgers stuff because you can't lock in with anything. Mm. And it's the unglamorous part of practicing the guitar.
Yeah.
And again, timing, a bit like songwriting, is one of those things where we can give you so many options and so many ideas and exercises, but something's got to click in here.
It has.
For it to come. Have you anything to add to that?
I would say, like you said, if some people have timing, I say to students when they start, I say, what's your favourite song? Or what if a song comes on in the car, do you tap to the steering wheel? I do. Now I have some. You'll know what I mean. Some people have rhythm, some people don't. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're dancing on a dance floor at a party. Can you just tap along to something? Again, it's that idea of finding beat 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're in a 4/4 time signature, which 90% of songs.
Could we just because this might seem really rudimentary, Brian, but if I was to sort of do my 4 metronome here, and we're gonna have, let's take that chord progression for Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, and I want you to play F, G, F, G, and making sure you're on beat 1,
2, 3. So that's what, if you're the metronome on my app or a real metronome, I'm going to let that play for a few seconds, and then I'm going to find 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now, a lot of students go, if you keep going, they might start in the middle. 1, 2, 3. Now it still works, you're just out of sync with the metronome.
And that's why when you're practicing with the metronome, you want to have something, they call it an accent, don't they? You hear how the first note is higher.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Guthrie Govan trick I learned.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've been dying to use it.
Another thing you mentioned, playing to the record.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, but it tells you when you're wrong. If you're about to go to the chorus and they're still singing about, Summer of '69, Brian Adams say, he's still singing about Judy sat on the porch or whatever, and you're going to play the chorus,
you're going to be
you're wrong.
Minor,
Yeah, and it's frustrating, but it sounds really condescending, this, and I really don't mean it this way. While you're a beginner, or you're still learning, everything is hard. So just put that little bit of work in. We had someone in the Facebook group doing alternate picking to the metronome. Salute to you, sir, because that is so boring, for want of a better term. But while you can't play, you might as well sit.
It's you can sort of apply that sort of methodology to any whatever trade you're in. Building, for example, the stronger the foundation is for the house, the longer it will be stood. I still practice with the metronome, and I'm 20 years down the line. Now, I don't feel like I need to work on my timing. What I need to do is maintain my timing, which is a different conversation.
It is, because it's the longevity we're talking about here. Yeah,
and it's your musicianship. But you can play the most amazing sounding G and C chord, but if you can't do it in time, it's a balance. You want to be... In theory, the tide will lift everybody. It'll lift all your techniques at the same rate, and it's not the case at all. Some people, naturally, chords come a bit easier to the melody. Yeah. Some people, timing comes to a little bit easier. And I think it's got a lot to do with how much time you spent in your 20s dancing drunk in nightclubs, to be honest, which I did none of. That's why it's terrible.
You'll find there might be a riff that you're struggling with and you want to build speed. The other year, I challenged myself to learn how to sweep pick, which is where essentially, if you, I'd strum all 6 strings, but I'd play a note on each string, and what I did with that, I used a metronome, and I started really slowly, where I'd be going, And, right, it was boring because I wanted to go. But you just build yourself up.
So I taught a lesson yesterday. You will know who you are if we were doing this. I taught a lesson yesterday, and we were working on Sultans of Swing. Mm-hmm.
Difficult rhythm in that, to be fair.
Well, but we were doing the lead parts.
Okay.
Doing all that business. And he can play it, and it sounds great, but then doing it with the record at 100%, he's sort of getting lost a little bit. And I'm like, well, this is going to sound really, really stupid, but why don't we slow it down? Mm-hmm. And it just not occurred to him that it's like, right, we'll try it at 75%, and literally we'll break the solo into chunks. That's chunk 1.
Yeah.
Chunk 2. And we literally just we got the first one down at 75% with the record, mind.
Yeah.
On YouTube, you can slow it down. And then we bolted the second one and bolted the third one. And within 20 minutes, he had the whole solo. And he's playing it at 75%, but he's playing it. And all the, the
intricacies.
All the little bits of vibrato. All the really sort of like, the little, like you say, idiosyncrasies. The stuff that makes it sound the way that it does. He had the breathing room to be able to do it and practice it, and he could do it, and it's almost like he surprised himself actually how quickly it all come together. And I can guarantee I'll see him next week and he'll have it 100% and it'll be sorted. So the gauntlet has been thrown down, mister.
So you are. Brian, use a metronome, slow things down, take your time, and it will slot into place. It's frustrating, but you just slow it down, count to 4, round and round in your head, say things out loud. Guitar playing is cognitive. If you're looking at a strumming pattern, which is another podcast, I think, down, down, up, down, up. Don't just try it. I said to myself, say it out loud or in your head, because it is cognitive. You know, when you're carrying too many things in the kitchen, you've got nice food in one hand and stuff for the bin in the other. It's going to be really easy to put the nice food in the bin.
How many times have you thrown your car keys in the bin? I've done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Like,
sleeves going up.
Yeah, that's it. Minging.
Yeah, I think we should move to our riff, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
You've thrown it to me this week.
I've thrown it to you this week. Just a reminder for those of you at the back. Last week's riff was
Money.
Was Money by Pink Floyd. And today we're going to have a look at Carry On Wayward Son. So
Kansas, 70s track, plenty of harmonies, plenty of guitar solo. It's just it's like Bohemian Rhapsody. There's so many different sections in it. But this is the riff that we're going to be looking at.
Ace.
That's the initial riff. Now, we've got a few different skills here. So for those not watching, it's going to be quite difficult to play this while you're in the car driving home from work. But if you are, grab your guitar and let's have a look.
What if you are driving home from work?
Yeah, don't grab your guitar if you're driving home from work in the back seat. So this is we're going to start off with what I call finger per fret rule, or on-off-on, as I also like to call it, whereby I've got my ring finger on the 5th fret of the low E and my first finger on the 3rd fret. And we're going to need both of them. So again, like I said, down, down, up, I'm saying things out loud. I'm going to reference the frets. 3, 5, 3, 5. So what I've done there, I've gone from the 5th fret of the low E, 3rd fret of the low E, back to the 5th fret, and then 3. So it'd actually be 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3. So that's my first step. What I'm going to do from there is slide my ring finger from the 5th fret of the A string to the 7th. So we get 2 notes but 1 pick. It's quite a good deal. Now from there, I'm keeping that phrase. If you're watching my fingers, you can see they haven't moved. So I'm sliding that across. What I've got there, now my fingers are in that position, I'm going to hit the 5 on the A string. And I'm going to hammer on. If you listened a couple of weeks ago, if not, go and have a check.
Yep.
I'm going to hammer that on to 7. And then I'm going to use my first finger to hit the D string on the 5th fret. So it's like kind of like a triplet in the middle, isn't it? And then this is a very, I think, Let It Be style riff. You can hear that it's very Beatlesy, Oasisy. We all know who came first, but that's the second step, well, almost third step now, we're getting on a bit. Now that bit there, I'm picking once for those 3 notes. I'm keeping my first finger welded to the fretboard. Otherwise it gets a bit gritty. There's a bit too much going on there.
Okay.
And then to conclude that riff, I'm back to the 5 on the A string, and then going to hit a G. But while letting that A string ring out, that's really important.
Yeah, little dyad, and then you drop it.
And then I'm
down.
going to drop to F sharp, which is the 2nd fret. So this format isn't ideal. Maybe you could do a lesson on it in future, but this is what we've got. So that is our riff of the week. Whether you play it or listen to it, Carry On Wayward, sung by Kansas. Great tune.
Excellent. Thank you for that, George. So, this week, what have we worked on this week?
Oh, it's been a lot. So, we've looked at our technical focus, string bending, this week. Halves, quarters, full step bends, how, why, where. Likewise, we went neck deep and we looked at drop D tuning, how we get there, but more importantly, how we get back out again. So, whatever application you need it for, you should hopefully have a better idea of how to do that. We then had our gig stories, our audience questions, and now we're going to finish with the jam.
Okay, so you've brought a... this hasn't sort of happened intentionally, but you sort of started bringing random chord progressions to do.
A 1-4-5 gets a bit boring after a while, I think, a blues progression.
Absolutely. So we're doing a 4-bar progression, which is E, A sus2, D sus2, A sus2 again, and you sort of say it's like a sort of John Mayer-y kind
of country Nashville bluesy. There's a lot of lot of stuff
so I'm going to predominantly play in sort of E major pentatonic with the relative minor, and you mentioned a little bit of Mixolydian kind of stuff.
Modes. I'm sort of the water level has come here now. I've mentioned the word modes, but a bit of Mixolydian in this as well. So for those that way inclined, have a look.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. Can you start with the progression and I'll solo this time?
Brilliant. Well, thank you, James. We'll do it again next week.
See you next week, guys. Thank you so much.